Hello, I'm Rachel Mackay from the Recovery Room. I'm a manager in the museum and heritage sector and I'm also a consultant. Obviously, the sector and all of us in it have been through really tough times over the last year or so, and it can be really hard to know how we might steer our organisations through the mess of the pandemic and out of the other side in one piece, never mind in a better position. This gets even harder if you're working in a small volunteer-led museum where resourcing the strategising and the on-the-ground action you need might be really tricky. For the last few months, I've been working with smaller museums in the east of England to support them in growing through tough times. I think that some of the ideas and strategies that have come out of this work are really transferable and could be useful in lots of different places. So if you work in a small volunteer-led museum and you're trying to think of ways to go forward, sit back and let me tell you about 10 ways you can grow your museum through tough times. The first step, and I think this should always be the first step, is to ask the audience. All museums exist to serve their audiences, and for small museums, engaging with that local community is even more important, because if your local community don't know why you're there or don't feel that you're relevant to them, you're stuffed really. So get out into the community, find out what people need and make sure the museum is serving that purpose. Do people need a social space to connect, a venue to come and meet up with family members, a place to express themselves creatively? If you can position your museum as a critical part of the community will be unwilling to see you go. So do that bit of research. Don't just assume that you're already delivering what people want. Get out there and ask them. It's also important to look around you and look at how other organisations are serving those needs. A competitor analysis sounds like a big piece of admin, but it's really just looking at other nearby museums and attractions, looking at what they offer and their visitor feedback, which is actually really easy to access through sites like TripAdvisor. Think about what you offer that's different to those other places. Remember that most people don't visit a museum because they have a specific interest in Egyptian pottery or whatever your museum is about. They visit museums primarily to have a nice time. So to have somewhere to go as a family or facilitate another kind of social encounter with friends, often those experiential aspects like the customer service, the atmosphere and the cafe can be more important than the actual content. We often don't think that when we work in museums because we all love the content, but it is true. So that's what you need to be looking at when you're analysing competitors. It's not just other museums who do Egyptian pottery. Look at other organisations who provide the social experience your visitors are looking for. Think about what they do better than you and how you could adapt. And actually, you can ask them. As much as I'm using the word competitor here, this is actually a really open sharing sector, and I found people are so willing to give advice about how they do things, so there's a lot we can all learn from each other. So now that you've asked everyone and looked at everyone else, hopefully you have an idea in your head of what you need to be delivering. So now the important thing is to be really clear and organised about how you're going to deliver it and set up some good planning frameworks. Some of the work that I did with the museums in the east of England was just slightly untangling some more long-term conservation and development plans from the shorter-term business plans. Now, this is an important distinction because whilst you will have strategic goals and aims that you're really focused on, you also need to have a shorter-term plan focused on how you're going to operate as a business. Doing this can help you become more self-sustained and less dependent on ad hoc funding. So ideally, you should be looking to fund core business activities through core income. So that might be admission tickets, shop sales, or any regular grant funding from local authorities. One-off funds like National Lottery Heritage Funds should really be used for one-off projects. And I think this has been easy to get away from recently because we've all had such disruption in our regular income and we're all applying to one-off funds to try and make that up. But going forward, I think we want to get back to more self-sufficient business models. And having a business plan separate from all the project work you might want to achieve in the future is a good way to refocus that thinking. If you want a template for how a business plan like this might work, you can find a free one at my website, therecoveryroomblog.com. When funding opportunities do arise, we all know they take quite a bit of work to fill in and get right, so as part of setting up those planning frameworks, I would really recommend making sure that you know the benefits you're delivering as an organisation, so that you have them to hand and you can reel them off to any interested parties or for any funding applications. as part of revisiting the purpose of the museum, which we talked about before, try to break down further what those goals are and what the benefits of delivering those goals would be. So if you do all of that thinking up front, and you can even have that as part of your business plan document, it means that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you apply for funding. And in a time when we're all trying to access funds from lots of different sources, don't forget to make it easy for the people who really want to help you. Now that you've harnessed the power of your local community, you might well have loyal groups of supporters for your museum. And yet, despite the passion and dedication out there in communities, I still don't see enough small museums making it easy for people to give them money. To be slightly cynical for a moment, we're at a perfect donating time right now. People do understand that the heritage sector is in crisis and they're willing to give. And although the pandemic has understandably been very hard for many people, actually, because of furlough and the lack of spending opportunities, on average, people in the UK have more disposable income in their bank accounts now than they ever have done before. Now, I'm not saying you should be hammering down people's doors and asking for cash, but at the very least, people should be able to donate to you when they want to, ideally through your website or through a text to donate platform like Donor. So if you're not doing this and you're only going to take one thing away from this video, please make donations easy for people. Now, let's think about leveraging other technology, specifically ticketing systems. The ticketing landscape has changed so much in the last decade. It used to be that attractions would have to pay for a lot of expensive hardware to get a good ticketing system, but now that everything is cloud-based and often working on a per ticket commission, professional ticketing systems are much more cost effective for smaller attractions than they used to be. For retail, systems like Shopify are really cost effective and simple to set up and get rid of the hassle of dealing with large amounts of cash. So it's a far cry from the cash registers that most of us will remember. In terms of admissions, there's so much that a good ticketing system can do for you, from pre-booking, capacity management, gift aid, donations, cross-selling and upselling, and of course giving you lots of useful data on who your visitors are. It's a massive area. So before embarking on refreshing your ticketing approach, I would really advise putting together a list of your current requirements, as well as seriously thinking about how ticketing could support the growth of your future museum. There's a lot of opportunity in this area, so do give it some thought. Another potential area of growth might be your membership scheme. Many smaller museums started off with memberships or friend schemes that might have been the group that supported getting the museum opened or the heritage site initially restored. If this is the type of scheme that you have, is it still working for you? Membership should be accessible, offer value to visitors, encourage long-term engagement in a wide group of people. It should be sustainable, both from a cost and a staff resource point of view, and it should be delivering you a good source of income year on year. If yours isn't doing that, or if you don't have one, I'd really recommend exploring this area. Have a look at what other attractions are doing and consider these tips from the Association of Independent Museums on how to grow your scheme. I think they're really useful. I mentioned before that the museum sector is really open and sharing, and that is so true, never more so than during the pandemic. But if you're a volunteer running a small museum alongside a full-time job, or maybe you're retired and you probably don't have the time to build up these networks and make the contacts that can be so useful when you just want to pick up the phone and run an idea past someone. Some of the most valuable work I think I did for part of this project was also the easiest, just introducing people to other people that were helpful. And those connections are so important, and I want to keep linking people up after this. So I've created a new section of my website called the Recovery Register. The register lists lots of museum experts from across the UK, all of whom have said they're willing to be contacted for a chat about their area of expertise, whether it's COVID-safe reopening, ticketing, gift aid, health and safety, anything really. They're all people working in the UK's leading museums and visitor attractions, so they won't be trying to sell anything. They are colleagues, not consultants. So if you want to explore the register and link up with someone who could help in some area of your business, why not visit the Recovery Register? It's at therecoveryroomblog.com/recoveryregister. A lot of museums I've spoken to are concerned about volunteer levels and retaining them going forward. Volunteers are the lifeblood of many small museums, and so this is an understandable concern. However, the pandemic has opened up new opportunities for volunteering, particularly the opportunity to embrace remote engagement. Volunteers don't need to come from your local area anymore, especially if the support you need is in social media or digital engagement. Volunteer recruitment platforms like Reach are free to use if your charity has a turnover less than £1 million a year, and are a great way to tap into volunteer support in large numbers. You can even find trustees this way. Not only can you find new skills and support through embracing remote working, you can also welcome a more diverse volunteer pool into your organisation, with people of different ages and backgrounds from all across the UK, or maybe even the world, accessible to you like never before. So, whilst I think it's important to acknowledge that we remain in a period of crisis, I really do hope that we can use the pandemic to refocus some of our thinking and planning for the future and emerge more ready to take on whatever comes next. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found something that you can use for your museum, and I look forward to seeing what you do next. If you need any more support or resources, please explore the Share Museums East website and my website too. And if you can think of further resources or topics that would be useful, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks.